Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Another new location. I am out in the garden again. I thought I would give it a try and see how it goes. The lighting is obviously really nice out here. I've got my coffee. I've got my notes. Maybe you can hear the birds. Maybe you can hear some airplanes or helicopters passing overhead. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't hear any right now. But welcome to the channel. If you're new here, welcome back. Thank you. Welcome back. What am I talking about? If you're new here, I've gone outside and everything's gone haywire. I'm reverting to nature. If you're new here, and you could subscribe and like and comment and all that fun stuff that YouTubers always tell you to do. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but it really does help. So what am I here to talk about today? I'm going to be talking about Wong Kar-wai, and in particular, As Tears Go By, released in 1988, and Days of Being Wild, released in 1990, which are his first two films. And the reason I want to make this video is I want to address the notion of the Auteur Theory, which has come up in other videos of mine, and it's a French word, I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly. But basically, it's authorship in cinema, auteur being the French word for author, right? And what is authorship in cinema? And is that theory, does it hold water? Is it, is it valid? How is it not valid? Whatever. But so these films are very different films, and the reason that they made me think of the Auteur Theory is they have different cinematographers. Andrew Lau shot As Tears Go By. As Tears Go By takes place when it was shot in 1988, and it's very much like a crime film of that kind of late 80s Hong Kong cinema milieu of like City on Fire, A Better Tomorrow, like all those types of movies. But it's a youth movie, it's a violent movie, it's a movie about romance and really difficult decisions that these characters have to make, these working class characters. It's very, very similar to Mean Streets, the Scorsese film, so if that's a reference point that you'll understand. And Days of Being Wild is set in the 1960s. It has a much slower kind of rhythm. It's a more kind of sensual film, and that was shot by Christopher Doyle. And so the movies look very, very different. And Andrew Yao, I think, did an incredible job shooting As Tears Go By. And I really do think that you can see Wong Kar-wai's personality as a filmmaker in that film. And I think that kind of goes against the traditional critical narrative of here's this anomalous first film that he made, and then here's this second film. And it is really interesting that the first film fits more into its time, because it's almost like, well, here's your chance to make a movie. It's a first film, just make it, get it over with, and then you're in, and you can start kind of, and then on the second film, it's like, he really deliberately was like, I want to establish a voice as a filmmaker. What kind of stories do I really want to be telling and stuff like that. So cosmetically, I think they're very different films, but I think that there are some huge similarities between them, and I really do think there's just a couple things that really distinguish them from one another. So in terms of the similarity, they're both very romantic films, and they both have this really strong sense of romantic fatalism that's almost like nihilism, but I don't think is really nihilism. I think it's more like romantic fatalism, where you have these young characters who are falling in and out of love, and they have to make these really difficult choices, and violence is just kind of there, and it's calling to them, and it's part of their world, and they can't avoid it, and the tragedy is almost inherent to their condition, but also they do make decisions that lead them there, but they've gotten themselves into these really difficult places where this is more so As Tears Go By in terms of being stuck in difficult places. But Days of Being Wild too has, characters are presented with decisions, and they, their past really affects them, and it affects how they move forward. But there's a lot of scenes in both of these movies of people just like hanging out, talking, and I really see a Godard influence there with like the self-aware kind of criminal world of people just hanging out, having sex, talking, being friends, trying to figure life out. Like, it makes me think of Breathless, it makes me think of Band of Outsiders, it makes me think of like Vivre sa vie, which I know is a little bit different, but like Masculine Feminine. Again, it's not really about criminals, but it has that sense of people just like lazing around, talking, voiceover, like kind of postmodern cool, right? And then Scorsese, I think, is a huge influence on both of these films in terms of the violence and the underworld, and the character-driven criminal movie, and like young people, with like Mean Streets and Goodfellas is almost a coming-of-age movie, right? Because it starts when he's really young, and then it moves into adulthood and stuff like that. And very New York movies that Scorsese's making, and Wong Kar-wai is making very like Hong Kong films, but these movies look very, very different, and they feel very different, and they have different cinematographers. And Christopher Doyle is such a big part of what people love about Wong Kar-wai's film, and it got me thinking about the Auteur Theory and whether we can apply that to Wong Kar-wai, what it really means. So basically, the Auteur Theory means that there is an author of a film in the same way there's an author of a book, right? And I think if you've ever been around a movie set, or if you know how movies are made, if you're friends with people who work in the industry, you know that it's not true, right? Essentially, as a one-to-one direct comparison, it's not true. It doesn't work because an author sits down and writes the entire book start to finish. No one else touches it, right? When you make a movie, you have cinematographer, you have camera operators, you have an editor, you have actors. Actors bring a lot to character. Like, if you know anything about seasoned actors, like, they pick their characters apart, they rewrite stuff, like, they need motivation, and, like, they create backstories for their characters. They sometimes change the way that the plot works because they think, well, my character wouldn't really do that. Like, actors add a lot to a movie, and so do all of these other people who work on films, costume designers, set designers, all this stuff, right? And so when you look at As Tears Go By and you look at Days of Being Wild, and you see that they're different cinematographers and they have such different feels to them, you can very easily say the Auteur Theory falls apart right there, because cinematography is so essential to the film that they feel like completely different pieces, right? And so it's not just Wong Kar-wai's film, it's Christopher Doyle's film too, it's the editor's film too, whatever. This is where the Auteur Theory gets tricky to me, is that I do believe that filmmakers can have a voice that is theirs, even though they're working with all these incredible creative people. Alfonso Cuarón, for instance, I think very much has a voice as a filmmaker. I mean, Neil Blomkamp, if you like genre films, like District 9, Elysium, Chappie, those films have a voice. And like the Oat Studio stuff that he's done, the shorts, they have that same distinct voice, right? I mean, I've been talking about Scorsese a lot. He doesn't even write his own movies, right? But he has a voice through cinema. Tarantino has a voice. There's so many filmmakers you can point to. Fellini has a really prominent voice, right? But if the Auteur Theory does not hold up, then what is appropriate for cinema? This is the question I ask myself a lot. And I almost think of it as like, at first I thought composer, right? Because a Beethoven piece is always a Beethoven piece. But depending on which orchestra is playing it and who's conducting it, it's different. But that's a little bit different because, you know, a movie is a movie. It's not like a script, like a play is, that someone is then putting all these different spins on. That would be more of like a composer type of thing, like a playwright, right? Because you perform Shakespeare over and over again, and the actors and the director, it all changes, right? I think it's almost more like a songwriter, right? Like if you look at a band with a single prominent songwriter, like let's say Nirvana, right? Kurt Cobain has a voice as a songwriter. And that voice is very much his voice. And a lot of people would say that is the voice of Nirvana. But without Dave Grohl, if you're talking about Nevermind and In Utero, without Chad Channing, on the first record, without Chris Novoselic playing bass there, without Butch Vig producing that record or Steve Albini producing In Utero, it's not Nirvana, right? But it still is Nirvana in a way because it's Cobain's song. So I almost feel like, and again, a record is like a movie. It's set down in stone, and that's what it is. So if you look at Nevermind, right, that is Kurt Cobain's voice and vision as a songwriter, but without all those other parts, it doesn't work. And so I think that I know songwriter is not like the songwriter theory. Like that's not sexy like the Auteur Theory is, right? Like, but I think that's a better comparison to make. And as I go through these Wong Kar-wai films, that's something I'm thinking about of like, does he own the film, and in what capacity does he own the film? Like Kurt Cobain owns the songs in the sense that he wrote the chords and the lyrics and the melodies and stuff, but if you're talking about Nevermind, without Dave Grohl playing the drums, it's not the same song. So the recording belongs to the band, but the song belongs to the songwriter, right? There's no direct correlation, but I think that's kind of closer than Auteur Theory. So drop in the comments, kind of let me know where you land on this, how you feel about this theory, and how you feel about filmmaking theories in general, and who owns a film, and whose voice is the primary voice of a film. And someone like Robert Altman, for instance, who's often written about as an auteur, like vehemently spoke against that theory and was like, he basically would say that all I do is facilitate collaboration. Like I'm in charge, and I say, yeah, that's a great idea, actor. Do that with your character. Like he was really well known for just being like, what do you think? Okay, perfect. Go and do it. So there's degrees to it, and there are people who disagree with it, and some films are pure collaboration. But when you have someone like Wong Kar-wai who has such a strong, obvious voice throughout, I would argue, all his films, even As Tears Go By, which people like to take out, put on the side there, what do we really call that? So anyway, my name is Will. This is Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about my new location, and we will see you next time.